you're not going to change those people's ideals and memories of you. You're not going to change the choices they've made in the way that they see you or perceive you, is a better language. So that's what we call a losing battle. Like, there's no reason to go back and try to convince your friends, your enemies, your parents, anybody that, oh no, it didn't happen. And the reason for that is, give them about 5 or 10 years from now, and let's say you're successful at some other activity, then they will reevaluate.
Welcome to Mindset Lessons from the Field. I'm Gina Cazaza, the author of the upcoming memoir, Training with the SEAL. Today's guest trains Special Forces. He has a show on Gaia called Quantum Effects. He is an energy healer and has developed his own healing method called Creative Energetic Health, which uniquely combines healing techniques from quantum physics, Native American medicine, Chinese martial arts, Kundalini yoga, I can now pronounce this word, Avita, and traditional medicines. Hope I got that right. Ladies and gentlemen, Randy Veitenheimer, thank you so much for being on the show, Randy. I'm really excited to talk with you today.
I'm excited to talk to you too.
Let's get right into it. Let's talk about why you're on the show and what you got for us today.
First of all, I appreciate all the episodes you've done with people that have served in the military, and particularly enjoy their stories. There's a lot of stories that maybe they don't share. There are problems that they encounter that fall outside of their expertise. And it just so happens those are areas I've been interested in for many years. Mm-hmm. So this conversation got started, is why we're here today, because of an email you sent me where you were laying out a problem you had observed. And I thought I would read parts of that and kind of let people know what we're talking about, because the subject matter is contained in that email.
Yeah, let's do it.
What happens is conversations get started, and then the next thing you know, we're 2 hours deep into something. So I'm going to practice my reading skills in public, and let's see how I do with all the pronunciations and everything.
Better than me, I hope.
So the conversation got started because you sent me an email, and it said I was talking to a former, we'll say, Green Beret, Special Forces, somebody. You talked about where he'd lived and various things that were going on with him. But you talked about one that had recently had an event where he was arrested and had to step down from a lot of positions he held and this, that, and the other. What is interesting, though he's not proven guilty, he's still charged with it. And we'll get into why all that's true. They were telling you how these things ruin your career, and it's hard to bounce back. And there's reasons for it. Another reason they ruin your career is it's intentional. Okay. And so that's my theory on it. And then he mentioned somebody going through a divorce, and the woman had framed him for some activities on the internet, which apparently weren't true, we'll say. So that's the gist of every one of these, is that you're presented with information and you don't know what to do with it because it's outside of the battle space that you're used to. I mean, if you're hit with a threat or hit with aggression, how do you respond? Talk about it as either Glock time or gold time. In other words, like, you can fight your way through it, or you can find another avenue to go down that doesn't require you to engage in battle. That's the language I use. And then you said it reminded you of some of the people I've helped, and I've got a couple of stories about that. The thing you said was most interesting. Apparently, this is a big thing in Special Forces, Green Beret, all the upper echelons, we'll call it. And your question was, how does one recover? And we'll address that. And you should ask me again when I lose my place. Okay. So you said it reminded you of some MK Ultra experiments, and we'll just call it psyops.
Yeah. And like, that was not what I sent. It was just like, I don't remember the actual story, but like, I mean, the whole entire idea of the story was they asked a group of people, it was like a focus group, and they asked a group of people and they said, we're just going to go with Karen. Okay. I don't know the word for word, paraphrasing, and they said, Karen's a mom. She's very involved. She's in the PTA, and they said all these wonderful things. And then they said, what do you guys think about Karen? And everyone's like, we love Karen, right? And then they said, Karen was arrested. She robbed an old lady. What do you think about Karen? And they were like, we don't like Karen. And then they said, oh, Karen was wrongfully accused. What do you think about Karen? And most people didn't change their mind. They still didn't like Karen. And that, when I was talking to the Green Beret a couple of days ago about ruining of the career and how it is, and like you said earlier, you said it's intentional. Well, yeah, exactly. That's what that wife did. That's what that other person, they intentionally went to ruin their careers, and they succeeded. And how does one recover from that? Because you have this whole entire world, like everybody in that focus group doesn't even know Karen, likes Karen, doesn't like Karen, and then still doesn't like Karen. You don't even know Karen. And
Sure.
and I just don't understand that. And even if, and the thing is like, you're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. And, we're just in a society of judgment. So that's where my question was like, what if that was to happen to me? What if that was to happen to anyone listening to the show? How do you recover from something like that?
Well, the first thing is to find out or to recognize that you're in an area that maybe you're not trained to. There's lots of language, and I could tell a million stories, but I'll give you three of them. I had a client that was wrongfully accused of a crime that involved the internet. We'll put it that way. In that case, I won't say the state or name, but I was able to help calibrate like his lawyer's responses. The big thing that happened was I calibrated the amount of money the DA had to prosecute the case. And I told him if he would keep his mouth shut, he could outlast it, because at some point they will run out of money and it no longer becomes political front page news and all these other things that are meant to sway public opinion. Don't think that they're not pursuing a psyops type operation to persecute you in the public space before they ever get to anything called a trial. And so we call that the process is the punishment. So even if you come out of it clean, which in this case we did, we outlasted them. They kept trying to make a plea deal. I kept telling them, don't do it. And he was able to get out of it clean. So I consider that a success because he was able to persevere. Success number one. Number two, I had another guy, another state, Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, that was accused of involuntary manslaughter. That's a pretty hot case, and they had convicted him. So on appeal, he called me, and I went through it again, told him what might be beneficial to tell the lawyers to say. And as we went through that process, we was able to get it thrown out, the whole thing, like it never happened. The third one had another case, another state, and I wasn't successful. I mean, the cards were stacked against you. What that means is that he had a lot of money, a lot of patents and all kinds of property, and it basically was taken away from him. I sat through the whole court proceedings and everything, and there wasn't anything we could do to change the vector of what was going on. They had it locked up that this is where they were going to go right from the beginning. Those are wars you can't win, okay? You can try, you can spend all your resources, and you just end up nowhere. Now, what's the message of all of them? You need to pick a different direction, a different goal. That's why I say it's Glock time or goal time. And the reason for that is you have learned all these skills, like in special forces, military, and they're very efficient at getting you into and out of a battle. They're entirely clueless about what to do with you afterwards. So we tend to come out of that with a highly developed skill sets that have no application in the modern world. So what I've told several of my clients in the military is when you come out of the military, first of all, you're coming back to a free fire zone. And what that means, anybody can take a shot at you. The problem is the rules of engagement do not allow you to use a Glock. It's absolutely forbidden. for you to go shoot your wife, the judge, the police, anybody that's involved in the contention that you're in. The reason is you've never been trained to that type of warfare. The Japanese samurai at the end of the Meiji Restoration or one of those events back then, they switched over to be bureaucrats. In the Star Wars movie, there's one of them that says, oh no, now we're entering the age of the bureaucrats. Well, welcome home, okay? Because bureaucracy will kill you. They have all kinds of rules. They have all kinds of procedures. They have all kinds of what we call jurisdictions. And you're going to fall into those one way or the other. That's the current situation. You come home, you need another set of skills. You need to go back to basic training. That may include legal, it may include intellectual, it may include college. It's just that your skills are not sufficient in this battle space. And unless you've been through a bunch of them, I have, either myself or through other people, then you're just not going to be that good at it. You're certainly not Olympic level, okay? Unless you're a really high-priced lawyer, because that is the only way to interact with that bureaucracy past a certain point. So now we'll get to like how you got here. When you find yourself in any of these situations, then you need to, first of all, take a break, center yourself, and then decide on which direction you want to go. That's goal setting. And that has nothing to do really with what's going on as far as a lawsuit or being prosecuted for anything. The CIA had a saying back during the Vietnam War. They passed the little belt buckles that said, and let's see if I can get it straight, success comes to those who hustle while they wait. Now, what does that apply to this? I was in a lawsuit and there was nowhere for me to go. I was going to lose it. So I was driving down the road after I'd been presented with this, and I saw a sign for some lawyers. Just in a bad part of town. And I went in and I said, how much you charge to work on this bankruptcy at that time? And he gave me a price like in the hundreds of dollars, which I thought was ridiculous, okay? And I said, how long will it take you to do this, right? And he said, oh, we can get it done in a few weeks. And I said, well, how long could you string it out? So the process is the punishment, not on my side. What that means is he spent the next 2.5 years dragging that thing out. Success comes to those who hustle while they wait. During that time period, I was able to create, let's say, some corporations, LLCs, and generate $2 or $3 million. So when the bankruptcy came, I filed bankruptcy. I'm telling myself. They awarded him whatever, and that was the end of it. I was so proud of the guy for taking that long, because it gave me an opportunity to strengthen myself, learn new things, and move on. So that's the lesson really of any of this, is that's what's required of you. The second thing is that at one point in my training, I was set to replace somebody who was training some of our special forces since the Vietnam War. And at one point I asked him, like, what was the deal about the surveillance we were under? And he said, oh, they check on us. And I go, why? And he said, well, they want to know where you are. About every 6 months, they'll come and look at you, see what you're up to. And I go, why? And he goes, because we're the only people that can train a military or train an army. And he said, they'll keep track of you the rest of your life. So now we go to, look who we've trained. Look at all the special forces operators, all the high echelon people. Look at the skill sets that they're bringing home. Do you think any government in the world wants those people around? Now, this is my opinion, okay? You can't attack them physically or in a warlike manner. Why? That doesn't come out well on your end. I don't care how many people you put up against them, because they're geared and trained to enter the battle space as winners. They're not trained to lose. So you're up against a pretty proficient enemy if you decide taking any of these guys on. So then the question becomes, well, and this is my opinion, how do you marginalize them? That's a good language. And the answer is through psyops. It's like what they call extraction of value. They have to take the value of your experience, the value of your thoughts, the value of your emotions, the value of your beliefs away from you. And how do we do that? Well, your wife accuses you of something. your business partner, your friends, people you don't even know. And what happens is now you've tied yourself up into a battle. Number one, you probably can't win. Remember, you don't have the training for. And you tend to respond with anger and fear and all kinds of manner of negative emotions. None of that helps you get through the process, because this is a court of ration and reason at one level and irration and no reason at the other. Because of that, there's no clear path forward, and that's what people find themselves, whether the war is a divorce or whether it's an accusation of some sort of bad behavior or malevolent intent or something's going on that has put you in a position to negate the skills that you gained over the last 10 or 20 years of discipline that you've been through. So that's how we got here. Okay. It's my opinion that it's intentional. That's a good conspiracy theory, and I really like them. I believe all of them because it's entertaining. The other part of this is like, well, look at your VA and their responses to the problems you have. Look at the government and the responses to your problems. The idea that you have a legitimate issue is not addressed in what we'll call a timely manner. Why? It's the same practice as I did with that lawyer. How long can you drag it out? How long can I stretch out an appointment with the VA? How long can I stretch out the process that continually robs you of your energy and your ability to function? How long can I do it and persecute you or prosecute you in a way that you end up drinking or drugging or taking your life, which is what we see in a lot of these people? I'm not for it. I'm thinking that maybe we should do something different. That's my opinion. Okay. So does that explain kind of how we got here?
Yeah. That definitely explains how it got here. And what I want to know, though, from what you said about let's just go with the two cases that you won, right? The first one with the internet and then the second one with manslaughter. Now, my question, though, is, and one thing that we talked about why I emailed you this question was because when I was talking to that Green Beret, he was talking about how that reputation is completely ruined, right? You're losing family members, you're losing friends, like all these things just go away, right? So even though that, let's just go with the internet, right? That case you won, and manslaughter, it's like you could still look those people up and you could see, because, the news, they could put whatever they want out there. And regardless on if they were found not guilty, you still have that photo, right? So people don't look at, like I mentioned, the MK Ultra experiment, like they're not looking at the good. They're looking at that one negative thing that ruined your whole entire life. So how does one recover from that? How did your two clients recover from something like that?
They pursued different careers. That's very simple. So what happens is that the destruction of identity, first of all, it's an assumed identity. You take who you were at 18 or 19, and let's say you went in the military. You assumed a military persona. Mm-hmm. You assume the discipline, the belief system, the thinking, it goes on forever. That constitutes a lot of memory, a lot of data, a lot of neural pathways in the brain about how you think, how you feel, what you believe, right? And what disciplines you've practiced to enforce all that or support it. That's gone. It's interesting in spiritual work, they call it a dark night of the soul. In other words, it's going to come and find you and basically destroy everything you thought about yourself and everything you thought was valuable or interesting or worth pursuing. The you that thought life was worth pursuing in this manner is still available to pursue something else. That's why we say it's a switch, Glock or goal. If you switch to a goal, then that goal can be anything. Basically, I tell people, what would you have done if you hadn't gone into the military? I would have been a doctor. I would have been this or that. So one of those clients now is pursuing being a doctor. So was it a good thing or a bad thing? Well, it was something that wasn't fun to go through. This is what we say. But the outcome allowed him to go from, let's say, shooting people to helping people. He might have been helping people by shooting them. I don't know. I tell bad jokes that everybody understands. But the idea that he would take whatever experience and ability to discipline himself and convert that into another goal and become successful at it is like the gist of this conversation. That is no longer available to you. That's what we say, dark night of soul. The wife leaves, she's unavailable. The husband leaves, he's unavailable. The job leaves, everything leaves. Okay, it's a process of change. But the language we use is old soldier. And what that means is don't sit around and tell me how much and what you did and how it was and all the things. We have plenty of movies for that. And it's not that it's not interesting or that you didn't earn the right to talk about it. It's a sheer fact that I want to know where you're going now. And if you can't answer that and all you can do is talk about the past, then you are lost to yourself and lost to society. And I'm not for that. I think you play a role. And I think that the amount of discipline and interest and belief and all those things give you the best opportunity to move forward in life in a different direction. And that's the different goal we talk about. You can't shoot them all. That's what I tell people that come out of the military. And if they're fresh out of the military and they hit this right after they come in, that's a response. I mean, 2 or 3 of them are going through, it's like, I want to go kill them. And it's like, that's not allowed in this paradigm. You've gone out of that battle space. You're in a new battle space. And it's called psych warfare, psychological warfare. That's the new battle space you're in. And I promise you, you need to spend the same amount of time in discipline, study, activities that allow you to become proficient in it, or you're going to get lost to the system. That's why I think that to a certain degree, all the problems that go on with our ex-military professionals is contrived and is a program to devalue and a program to kind of like load them up with so many problems that they become highly inefficient at exercising the discipline and skill sets they learned in the military, because no country on this earth wants those people alive and out and about. You realize we have, say, 1 million men around the United States, I'm sure it's a low number, that have extreme, let's say, shooting skills, right? They're all disorganized. If you organize, then now you have another problem. But just think all those decided at one time that they wanted to be involved in something. It's they already have that. They'll never forget it. And I don't think they should. I just think that they need to switch to a goal system and to recognize they're in a battle space that maybe they haven't been trained to. But training is available. Now, how do we start? That the way I do and the way I give people, all of them, is this right here is to allow you to know what kind of warfare you're in. When I work on people, I tell them you're in war for your physical health. That's a big one. Then your mental health, which is your relationships. Then your emotional health. These are all battles. These are all war fronts that you need skills in. Physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, psychological. That's the one being waged at us through the internet and through politics and all kinds of other things. So when we look at those, it's like, golly, you need to train up. It's no time to sit around and watch reruns, is what I call it. The second thing is like, how did you get there? I promise you, if your wife divorced you or husband or boss fired you, they already had it in the works right from the moment you meet. And we call that a scripted program. So marriage, I'll make my famous joke, is a script. You just have to see what kind of book they wrote. Romeo and Juliet, Hamlet. I mean, there's something going on, and you joined in and didn't read the end of the book. You didn't read the play. And it always amazes me when you get to the end of the play, it's always a shock. Oh my God, she left me. Oh my God, I got fired. Oh my God, I got arrested or whatever. It was in the works. It wasn't something that occurred right now. So then I tell people, maybe you should read this book. Because
what do you do after you say hello? Oh, yeah.
Because what it talks about is the extent to which you've been scripted and programmed. Mm-hmm. And until you learn that, you're just going to respond in the way that they want you to respond, whoever they are. And the result of that is you're basically going to lose those fights. And we don't lose them. All the people I help, I have one rule. I don't want you to lose. I want you to come out of this in the best way you can. And that means to be physically healthy, to be mentally healthy. And so, I give it as a program of you have to have the awareness to know how you are and what's really going on. Those 2 books help. And then you have to achieve some sort of balance so you can actually pick what goal you want, which direction you want to go. Once you do that, now you have an opportunity to move in that direction with whatever resources you have left. And if you don't have any, then go get some resources in whatever way so that you can start pursuing your future, not the past.
So then when we were talking, there's another person with us when we were having this conversation. They were former FBI, CIA. And I mentioned someone in special forces that had an arrest happen to them and, is then pursuing another career and changed their identity, it's like change your last name and stuff. And they said, that's really smart because that's really one of the only ways you're going to bounce back, because let's just say, you mentioned doctor, right? Going that route. And it's like, well, what if all of a sudden they look up that name and then they see, so what if they didn't change that identity? Like, look, you recommend changing your name when something like this happens? Or what if there's someone right now that's going through it, right? And he's pretty well known. And it's like, well, when you're well known, right? And this happens a lot in the film business. I mean, you have something happen to you, right? And you go away for a little bit and then you come back, right? And everyone likes a good redemption story, but some people can't let go of the person that you were, right? And what if they didn't change their name, right? And they pursued a different angle and then that came back up for them? Like, how do you sleep at night after something like this happened? And then you're like, I'm pursuing a new path, but there must be nightmares that this might come up again, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah. The whole purpose of negative events is to educate us. People hate this. We pass on the ability to progress, the ability to help everybody understand when we encounter problems, that if we can learn from them, we can pass that information on so other people have an easier time. The way I look at it, I went to a family reunion, school reunion, 50-year reunion. I took my girlfriend who had never met any of these people. And one of my former friends in school said, "Hey, Veitenheimer, are you still getting arrested every Friday night?" And I go, "No, that's, I kind of quit that." So she was referring to the fact that they would, what do they call it? What's the movie where they would, precognition? I think Tom Cruise in or somebody about, they would pre-crime. They would arrest me on Friday night. They wouldn't charge me after 5 o'clock. And they would let me out on Monday, and they tell the judge there were no charges because they didn't want me on the streets on Friday night, Saturday night, and whatever. I appeared to be a problem. Okay. Now, that was all pre-internet. You could go dig through that. Now, does that make me a bad person? No, that made me a product of my environment. I wasn't the only one. Everybody else was doing it too. Like we had a reputation as like the 3rd most violent school in the country in the 50s. Like, where do you think that came from? And the behaviors that we all exhibited. And of course, the best explanation of it is Coolio, Gangster's Paradise. And what does he say? I'm a victim of the hood. I was raised there. I didn't know any different. And I'm like, when I heard that song, I was like, wow, that's the first time everybody ever explained that you were the outcome of all those programs, all the problems that your parents and everybody else had, the drugs, the alcohol, the craziness. You were just the outcome of that. It doesn't mean you don't have the opportunity to change. But when you change and say, I no longer do that, nobody believes you. Okay. It's like you get front page news and the retraction is this big on the page of the newspaper at that time. That's the way it works. The punishment is the process, or the process is the punishment. And even if you win, you still get tarred and feathered. We used to say the old language. I can tell you a good lawyer makes a difference. In fact, once I hired a good lawyer at the end of all that, it all disappeared. Nobody angle with him. The court, the justices, the judges, nobody wanted a piece of him because he sued everybody for money. So So that's why I say that there is a way through it, but it's a legal way. It's a more or less rational way. And if you can't avail yourself of it, which most people can't, then you're just stuck. Now you're stuck until you can pick another program. You can pick another goal. There's nothing that prevents you from being successful in a different way, no matter what has happened to you. And like you say, that's rehabilitation or whatever language you want to use. But ultimately, it comes down to you're going to have to spend your efforts to move in a different direction and away from those people, because that is what sets you up for the failure to begin with. I tell people going to college when they're 18 or military, your choice of friends will determine your future. Even in what they call millionaire clubs, they say if you're around 5 millionaires, you'll be the sixth. Well, you may not be the sixth millionaire, but you'll be a hell of a lot longer on the path than somebody that hung out with 5 derelicts, which is what I call what I did in high school. So, right. So you start to get the picture of all this, right? Is that, when you lose or get accused or whatever, you're going to have to change the whole show. You're going to have to change your belief system, your feelings, your thoughts. All of it is subject to change. And the great thing about that is, even though it's painful, I say you've been given that opportunity to be something other than what the world has positioned you as or programmed you as. It's like Coolio said, I'm a victim of the hood. I didn't have any choice. It's like those were the choices available to me. A lot of people, when they join the military, is they are running, not bad language, they are choosing a different path from that which they had been born into. Parents that were abusive or situations that were untenable are opportunities that weren't available, no matter what color, race, age, anything. None of that makes any difference. It's just your ability to choose that you're going to move forward in a way that is different than the way you've been programmed or the way you've been scripted out in life is the one I use. Everything going on is a script. It's already been written out. We're in chapter 51 in, let's say, the presidential race this year. In November, we get to be in chapter 60. And January, we get to see the epilogue or something. And it's already written for both sides. It's so people get to pick on which side. And when you do, if it turns out that it was in your favor, you're going to feel all happy. And if it doesn't, you're going to feel all sad. That makes you a normal person. And that is not going to let you be successful. You have to be able to understand that we have been under different presidents for the last couple hundred years. And our parents went through 4 or 5. I've been through 4 or 5. And we still have things to do. We still have places to go. We still have goals to accomplish. And until you can get your head wrapped around that instead of being involved in social media, then you're not going to do very well, my opinion.
Okay. So you said something really interesting where you said, you have to change your belief system. You have to change all this stuff from there. And so how does one just change that? And also, how does one detach their emotions? It's very emotional to all of a sudden be accused of something that didn't do, to lose family and friends, to have to then to lose everything that you built, right, and have to restart. That's very emotional. And while you're getting dragged through it, and especially today where there's social media, everything's all over the place, I mean, that would give me nightmares. How does one emotionally build that suit of armor and allow themselves to move forward? And how does one just change a belief?
Well, number one, the girl that asked me the question at the reunion, there's no way to change her memory. So that's what happens with what all is going on if it's a negative situation. You're not going to change those people's ideals and memories of you. You're not going to change the choices they've made in the way that they see you or perceive you is a better language. So that's what we call a losing battle. Like there's no reason to go back and try to convince your friends, your enemies, your parents, anybody that, oh no, it didn't happen. And the reason for that is give them about 5 or 10 years from now, and let's say you're successful at some other activity, then they will reevaluate, okay, or not. But unless you're presenting them with an entirely different persona, then it ain't going to happen. And that's why we say that you have to be able to change your belief system, all the things that got you to where you are today. Dark night of the soul. So you abandon that idea that you're going to change them. It's a losing battle. You can spend your life trying to prove your innocence, or you can spend your life being successful. Okay. And the problem becomes is that I don't care who you are, you've done something, or we're going to make something up. This is our beloved CIA again. If people want advice, three simple rules are: I didn't do it, I wasn't there, and I don't remember. And if you remember all those three things, CIA teaches them, you will never be convicted. You can't be convicted. How about we can name a president that said, I did not. And then when they pursued it, I don't remember. You were in the Oval Office, I wasn't there. So all the way through, what he's doing is creating doubt. Once somebody has created doubt about you, oh, that person's kind of sketchy. Okay. Anybody who's been trained to kill is kind of sketchy, right? They don't really need a reason, but their primary reason is they're afraid of you. And once people go into a fear state, you can read State of Fear by Michael Crichton. There's explanations for that. Once people go into a fear state, you can't convince them. You cannot, because they have come into a state where their own future is at risk if they stay around you. Okay, so what do we call that? PTSD on this side. On that side, it's just basically a state of fear comes into being. Whether it's deserved or not is not the answer. It's kind of like you being accused. It's not a question whether you deserve it or not. That's bad thinking. It's like you've been presented a new battle space and you're going to have to work your way through it or not. If you don't work your way through it, if you don't do goal setting, then you're going to be at the mercy of the court, is what we call it. So how do you do that? Number one thing is, like say, you can change your name. You can get an LLC. You can operate as a different persona or a different corporation, which is better in my beliefs. But ultimately, you're going to have to come up with changing who you are. Well, that's what actors and actresses do. You know, John Wayne wasn't his real name. That's very common and very acceptable in one type of career, is that you would do a stage name. We call it public and private space. What's my suggestion is you don't read the comments, right? And especially the negative comments. I can't remember who it is, very funny. I don't read negative comments, right? I don't read any comments at all. I have my assistant read them and tell me, are they bad or not, you know? And that's how they deal with it, is they ignore it. You know, my advice, of course, is that if something bad like that happens, you have to delete all your social media. You can just stop paying attention to it, because number one, it's not improving your life. I find very few people that use social media to improve their life. And at times it might provide some inspiration, like this kind of stories and stuff, but it still requires you to pursue active actions. So you would drop all the social media. If it's necessary, change your name. You definitely have to abandon all your friends, relatives, and everybody else that has formed an opinion, a negative opinion of you. Why? It's not beneficial anymore. And this is not running away. This is to give yourself an opportunity to reassess, redevelop, redeploy yourself with a new skill set. It's like, what's wrong with that? It's the story of most of our action movies, the flawed character that redeems himself. But I'm telling you, you don't need to redeem yourself. You definitely need to reinvent yourself. It's interesting that a lot of the work I do is it falls in the category they tell people of deprogramming. Well, it's to take the energy out of it. All PTSD is a function of memory. And of course, science doesn't know what to do with that. But if you take the energy out of the memory, it doesn't bother you anymore. It doesn't create feelings. It doesn't determine your actions for the future. And that's what I would tell people. There's practices of yoga, meditation. There's all kinds of things out there. But now you're going to have to look outside of the hood you grew up in. I promise you. You're going to have to look outside the belief systems you grew up in, unless they are beneficial in helping you deal with your new situation.
So by changing a belief would be doing something outside of what you already know.
Yeah, but one of the things I tell people is there's a different you, 50 states in the United States. It's called geomorphic programming. So you exist as a different person in Texas and in California and Florida and New York State. It's different language, different customs, different expectations. I grew up in Oklahoma, and Oklahoma has what I call a morphic overlay of being a gangster and outlaw, and it's where we get all the music, country and western music from. I moved to California as fast as I could, and out there nobody cared where I was from, what I did, or who did what to who. So I adopted a new persona of being successful, as opposed to the ones I was programmed. Remember the hood? And so everybody in Oklahoma has that overlay. Everybody in Texas has one. California is looking good. I like that. So I gave an interview of somebody from Australia, and I said, well, I'm just like you because Australia has the same overlay that Oklahoma does. And what is it? Both of them were territories, and the entire rest of the world dumped their convicts, outlaws, derelicts, renegades, all into that area. And that's what we called Oklahoma Territory. And they did the same thing to Australia. Now think about the consciousness of those people and the hood they grew up in. So I offered a solution to Australia. I said they should elect me king because I transcended and gone above my programming, my morphic program. I tell people, how's it work? Well, in Florida, there's a potential wife or husband for you, let's say, just in that area. In Texas, there's a different woman or man. And in California, a different woman or man. It's like every time you go more than 30 miles, it's a different environment. It's a different opportunity. You are no longer required to stay in the same place where the activity went on, where everybody knows you and wants to persecute you or has formed an opinion. Because as soon as you move to California or New York City, who the hell cares who you are and where you've been? I want to know what you're doing and where you're going.
But do you find that, like, what happened, like, would it be different if you were in the social media age? Because I mean, technically, even though you still go to another state and like nobody knows you, well, they can find you, they can find out about you, they can, you know, like all these other, like the two cases you had, like you could still find those people if you know their name.
Right. But what is required for you to do that? Now, more effort than is required if it's right there in front of your face. So now we hit the dilemma is, if I want to dislike you, how much effort do I have to go through to dislike you? Okay. How much effort do I want to go through to reinforce that? And so I love what the Hollywood, they call it buzz. How many times does your name get mentioned? Of course, when you're in the thick of it, you get mentioned a lot and it gets picked up and banded around. And then I go, well, how many remember that Joe Rogan used to be a bad boy? Well, what are you talking about? Nobody wants to hear that. Right?
Yeah.
Like you said earlier, the idea that people pick up on it like the Karen and don't want to change their name or whatever, or change their opinion. It's like Joe Rogan was a bad boy. Oh, don't talk to me about that. I'm telling you, he was a bad boy. He was a killer. Okay. And so are all the martial arts trained people that train in martial arts and all the people in the military, they're killers. Why? It's required. It's the persona that they're assuming. And is that being they're a killer now? No. But people want to hang on to their old ideas, just like the girl from my high school. She had formed an opinion. She had formed a perspective of who I am and or how I was. Now, she wasn't wrong in that. It's just that clothing, that overlay, that morphic overlay, that geomagnetic or geomorphic field doesn't apply to me anymore because I changed. Now, what didn't change was their memory. We're back to that again. Mm-hmm. So can you change the memory of people? Yes. We call it magic. So, and you know, and I practice most of my clients is by magic. We want to get rid of all the negative emotions, negative experiences that don't benefit them in a way that elevates them. That's the proper language. They gave me a name one time, one of the groups, science fiction, and we'll use the word reproductive magic. That was my name. Right? And because I couldn't understand what I was doing and what I was trying to do by training people in disciplines that they had not been exposed to, okay, that I thought would be most beneficial in a war type setting or a battle type space. I'm carrying on warfare for people in their own mind, in their own life, in their own experience. The difference is I'm on your side and want to help you. I want you to kind of like what we say, get over it.
I want to know them from what you just said, because that's the warfare of your mind. You know, it's
Right.
like, okay, so this just all of a sudden happens to you, right? Out of the blue, right? And then you have to literally abandon everything and go in a whole different direction. And you're probably not prepared for it. You probably didn't think about this, right? There's this dark battle going on in your mind of, you know, what's happening and where you're going. And then, you know, is more bumps in the road going to occur and all this other stuff. So how do you neutralize your mind? How do you not go so negative? How do you sleep at night?
Because a natural human reaction is to go away. What do we want when these things go on? We want it to go away. We want it to go away. The process is usually drugs and alcohol. And in that process, I go away. And guess what? When I come back after the drinking and drugging, I'm still in the same place in worse condition. The language becomes all interior. I teach as internal martial arts. I don't want to go away. I want to go inside and find where the answers are and where's the best direction to move. If I go away, all I've done is compound the problem and push it out into the future. By going inside, I can learn which is appropriate for me, not what society, not what the social media, not what the circumstances of the other people involved, because it mostly involves other people. That's why I gave the 2 books I gave you. When you learn that, first of all, you're in pain over all this. Pain is supposed to teach you something. It's supposed to tell you what not to do. It's like a telephone line that tells you, hey, something needs to be done here. So if you're in pain, you need to do something, not sit there with it, not dwell on it. And of course, this is normal, but it's not normal to have the techniques available to you that you learn in meditation and yoga and martial arts and a dozen other arts that are out there, because those are required to deal with society at this level. Otherwise, you get caught up in it. That's why I say, if you're caught in a social media storm, you have no more business in social media. It's kind of like if people come to me and say they're getting a divorce, you have no more business talking to that other person, period. It's now a function of lawyers. If you find yourself in a situation that requires you to go to court, then, or jail, it is no longer your problem. It's a problem for the lawyers, and you should support their efforts to benefit you. And then you should support yourself to benefit yourself by using all the discipline and all the experience you gain through let's say, the military, to apply that to a new goal. That's why we go back to that goal system, because a new goal will get you to a better place than no goal. And sitting around dwelling on it and still participating in the problem by calling your ex fill in the blank is never going to resolve it. They're never going to change their mind. Why? Because they have a script to follow too. They have a position in your life and they have executed it. And it's a harsh thing for people to realize is Sun Tzu said, keep your enemies close. I don't think he elaborated on it. We find out when we come back from Iraq or, Iran or, oh, that's the future one. I'm sorry, Afghanistan. When we come back, we find that society, number one, is not proud of us as a rule. They don't like us. The government and everybody is afraid of us and therefore have to sideline us in some way so that we don't become a problem by loading us up with problems. Again, my idea of how this all works is a psi war. It's very simple, and Very few people are trained to it. I've been trained to it. That is what is required of them now. You prepared for battle your whole life in the military. Now it's time to prepare for battle again. It's just they change the terrain. They change the rules of engagement. Remember Glock time or goal time? That should be exciting for you. It's kind of like if the bad people went away, we call them X's. If the bad place went away, the town or county or state you were in, there's a new opportunity out there. It's up to you to find it. I help people strictly by calibrating. Would you do better in Omaha or Minneapolis or, wherever, Austin, Texas, let's say. So given those three choices, you should go where you're best supported for your new goal and stuff.
You said something that I don't remember word for word, but it was like, I'll give you an example. When I was in that battle with that car company, they were going to sue me, the insurance, the car rental, and for the dent I never did. I was all riled up, right? Right. And I'm like emailing you every 5 seconds, and I'm just like flipping out, and I'm just like, they didn't have a case against me, and yet I'm like, I am in my mind going through the court case. We're not even at court, okay? It's not even going to court, and yet I'm playing it out in my mind. I remember I was driving to Charleston that day, and it's a 2-hour drive, and I drive in silence. Sometimes I listen to an audiobook. In the silence, though, my mind is just like I said, like it's taking me to court, and we're like playing it out, and I'm giving my opening and closing statement. None of this exists, right? And yet, and then I like get to the place, and I remember sending you an email about just getting this out of my mind, right? And then like an hour later, they dropped everything, right? And I'm just like, my God, that whole entire drive. And it wasn't just that drive. I mean, this is like weeks, okay, of me thinking I'm in court, playing all this out. I mean, again, like you put an action to it and you take action, but there's also moments like you mentioned where you are like sitting with yourself and you're like, or you're like cleaning and thinking, we think all the time. How do we change that thinking? Like, how can my mind was always on this incident that was going on, this problem that was happening, right? So how do you shift it and not let that mind plague you?
So you were a victim of what we call orbit of consciousness. What that means is you can't stop thinking about it.
Yeah, all the time.
So it starts here, goes around, and I don't care what you've seen driving down the road or whatever, here it goes again, right?
Yeah.
So that is PTSD, by the way. PTSD is an orbit of consciousness around a negative event. It's very simple. I've been able to change that on many individuals, because we stop the orbit. That's something I learned in yoga. Zen Buddhism, we call it stop thinking. Right. And like I say, it's a hard thing for people to do. Stop thinking requires you to sit down and literally stop thinking about it. Now, there's an easier way to do that, and we call it mantra yoga. And what we're doing is overriding the thought processes with a sound. Well, we did that in the 60s, and we called it rock and roll. And so it's a way to avoid thinking about Vietnam and Chicago and a whole bunch of other things that were going on, that we would use music. And in doing so, our thoughts wouldn't go there. I just told somebody yesterday, you can't listen to Led Zeppelin's Stairway to Heaven 52 times in a row. That's psychological warfare. We would do it when we left the bars at night by dropping $2 worth of quarters in and touch the same song 22 times. It makes people crazy, and it makes you crazy, right? To have that thought. And so to orbit and to explore all of it and to re-explore and re-explore means you don't have an answer yet. It also means you haven't made a choice. So remember what I said, if it became a court action, it's the responsibility of the lawyers. Your responsibility is to be healthy, make money, and support their actions on your behalf. That's the language. So it's kind of like your teammates now are people you never met before. I have a client, a young one I've been working with since he's 7 years old, and he's in a selection process for one of the NFL teams. We'll find out in the next month or so if he makes it. Okay, makes a roster. And I told him at that point, I will have to create a new team around you. You don't have one. You had a team, meaning the football team previously, and you have a new team you're going to, but you're going to have your own team once you get there. I want to know who your vice president is. In other words, somebody that speaks for you. I want to know who your accountants are, who your lawyers are, who your agents are. Who do you see all these people that constitute a team that is successful? So when I did investment banking, is something I played with, people would come to us with a brilliant idea, and we would say, who's your vice president? Who's your accountants? Who's your attorneys? Who's your this? If people couldn't answer that, we'd say the answer is no, you don't get money. And the reason you don't get money is you have no way to execute whatever your brilliant idea is. We know you have a brilliant idea, but we don't know your ability to execute it because you haven't put a team behind it. So it's something that all entrepreneurs and everybody trying to change out of the situation should realize, is that you have to get yourself to a point where you can start incorporating a new teammate, a new team to help you move forward in life. And obviously, the old team didn't help you if you ended up in court or ended up in a negative situation that's destroying your self-esteem and energy and thought processes and everything else. To stop orbiting, I give Sa, Ta, Na, Ma. It's a meditation. You can look it up under Kundalini Yoga. There's more. Sadri Sa is another one. It's a great one for taking you out of depression. All these are available. They can contact me or look them up on social media. So the internet's there, that it can educate you to a whole new income, a whole new energy state, or it can take you down the road of cats and whoever that girl is very popular right now on the internet. I won't name names. She became very famous for her activities, we'll put it.
Oh, yeah.
Social media. And it's phenomenal to me that even Bill Mayer and all these other guys want to interview this girl. Of course, that's the power of the internet, but it doesn't make you money necessarily. It doesn't advance your own consciousness. And if you're not involved in being able to examine your own consciousness, that's that Power versus Force book. If you're not available from a state of neutrality to be able to look at all the scripts and programs you've bought into all your life, you're going to continue to have problems. I tell people, avail yourself of anything that helps you move forward in life, helps you be healthier, happier, wealthier. Wealthier is very important to me.
So I ask.
I want all my clients to be rich.
I ask all my guests final question. It's the same question. What can we as the ones listening to the show can do on an everyday basis to get mentally tougher?
First of all, I've used mentally stronger. Okay.
Mentally stronger.
Yeah. Because what we say is kind of like lifting weights. I can do 5 pounds right now, and maybe next week I can do 10. People shouldn't marginalize themselves by thinking that they got to start with 100 or 200, 300 pounds or whatever. We call it small amounts and large amounts of movements or repetitions. And in that way, you build strength. If anything, I tell people strength is the first requirement that you build. And the second one is stamina. And that's one thing that I don't find anybody else in the world teaching. You know, they'll teach you strength and they'll tell you can find magazines and everything how to be stronger. But they don't teach you how to have stamina of being Gina, stamina of being Randy, because you're going to get attacked. That's a given. And that's the fallacy of our world, especially some of the younger generations, is they've never been attacked before. You have to be able to respond to it by choice, not by reaction. So again, all these situations go on, and if you're reacting to it, you're already behind. You need to set up a choice matrix that allows you to move forward. And you should consider that all these things are going to happen. If you marry somebody, there's a chance you're going to get divorced. If you work for somebody, there's a chance you're going to get fired. Why not explore that before you get there? And what that means is if you get into a lawsuit or a court system, you should have already explored that. Who's your attorney? Who's your support system? Who can lend you basically their own consciousness in a way that allows you to move forward? not allow you to be dependent. Okay, it's different. So these are new skill sets. Men who stare at goats in the movie. I think they called it the New Earth Army. It's like everybody's welcome to join. It's an intuitive army, and I'd like to be the general in charge of it. So I'm up for King of Australia, General in New. I'm trying to make myself available out there because these are things you need to be successful now. So how do you build strength? Through discipline. And the rule that I give people to start with is very simple. Your discipline will save you. And if you've been under discipline, you have an advantage over everybody else. It's time to reinstall that and pick a new discipline. The way I learned it is every time you go to a different martial arts studio, you start as a white belt. Why? You're learning a new discipline. And so you should be happy about that. If you've been forced to learn it, that's a little rougher. You need to get rid of all the emotions associated with that. But if I make a choice to go from Kung Fu to Aikido or to Jiu-Jitsu or to, all these other martial arts, I make those choices. I get to suffer the pain of learning those disciplines. There'll be pain involved, but I don't have the pain of the previous discipline. I'm not getting beat in the same way. And so that's kind of the way we look at this whole process. It's like, okay, I got beat up pretty bad in that one. Now I'm going to go somewhere else and learn a new way of getting beat. You'll never get away from getting beat. The choice is to be happy about it. So that's what I would tell people.
And what about stamina? How do you, you said, you need stamina.
They were some of the worst exercises we ever went through. We would stand with our partner and we had to stand there, arms down, and just relax, and they would push us down. Then you had to basically just fall down. And it's pretty funny to begin with. And about the 23rd time, you're ready to kill somebody because all of a sudden now all that anger comes out of you. And at that point, you would get hit in the back of the head with a stick. The second stamina exercise was they would spit at your face.
That's disgusting.
Yeah. Exactly. And what would your response be? Well, the first thing that happens, you tighten up your fist, you get hit in the back of the head again. Like in street battle, people do things like that to initiate an attack. And if you don't have the stamina to resist that because of going through that and training for it, then you're automatically in the fight. Sun Tzu says, pick your time of battle and your place of battle. Never let the enemy pick the time and stuff. So there's a lot to learn out there. Just because you come out of the military or out of a marriage or out of a corporate structure, now it's time to begin your education. That's what I tell people. And that's what I do. I give them a discipline to pursue based on them. It's not gender specific. Okay. In other words, discipline's the same for everybody. Right.
Gotcha. All right.
So put yourself under discipline no matter what problem you're facing. If you can do that, then you will be better. And, like I gave you, I'll start with a time to get up and time to go to bed, 40 days straight. And if you don't make it, start to count over. That's discipline. Then if you maintain it for a year, we call that stamina. Because the world's going to try every way in the world to keep you from pursuing that. And you know that. Everybody I've ever given it to knows it. Yeah. I know it because I went through it. I went through a 3. That was crazy. No time for relationships or anything if you're going to pursue a 3-year program. People sometimes say, well, I want to be your student. And I go, I don't think so. You would have to go under discipline. God, people hate it. I mean, they just are not fond of it. But in that way lays strength, in that way lays discipline, in that way lays stamina.
And all this prepares you for the inevitable, like you just mentioned, like the generation now, it's like, they don't understand the hard, that's coming. And then when it comes, it's emotional. They're reacting emotionally.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. One of the things when we would fight in the ring, the first time in, a lot of the students would, kind of like cry or something. And we would tell them, what makes you think you're not going to get hit? Right? It's like one of the special forces, I said, what makes you think you're not going to get shot at? And I said, you have to decide right now how you're going to act, not react when that happens. And if you can't do that, then you become a statistic.
Now,
So,
what if you decide, like when you make a decision, right? But then all of a sudden it actually happens and you do totally different than what you decide.
then that's the first martial arts called awareness. You have to be aware of the opportunities and which direction they lie. Every situation presents an opportunity. Unfortunately, I learned it as an opportunity for death. So what we were required to do is find any option other than death. I think like Don Bongino says, don't get dead. so that's a pretty good program. But, like when you're learning to fight, you learn if they're shooting at you, you've already decided where to seek cover or where to fall or where to move. If the shooting starts, it's a continual process. If it's not continuous, you get surprised. If it's continuous, you wear yourself out thinking. So instead, you learn to extend your awareness to include all the options that are available to you. They talked about it in Men Who Stare at Goats, and I teach it as one of the martial arts. So awareness is the first martial art I teach. You already know where you're going to go. You've given yourself, let's say, 5 options. And if none of them are available, you take the next opportunity. That's the trick. So we're looking constantly for opportunity. Everybody does. It's just they don't do it consciously. So I hope that helps.
Yeah. Thanks so much for being on the show. I really enjoyed this. Was a really great conversation that I really think a lot of people would benefit from listening to.
Yeah, we want everybody to do well. We want everybody to have whatever help they need, and want everybody to help themselves to the best outcome. People can reach me. It's Randy Veitenheimer, Energy Doctor spelled with a K at me.com. I put out my phone numbers, 202-904-9560. I'm in social media, Facebook, Instagram. I have shows on Gaia, the Quantum Effect. I have some others I'm getting ready to do. I'm available on Zelle or PayPal. Those are my 2 most popular platforms. So anyway, I want everybody to do well. If anybody needs some help, they're always welcome to call me, and I'll try to get to it as fast as I can.
Yeah, you're good at that. You're really good at that. No.
We were going to start with some of the other things I do and explanations, but I love this email because I really think that, my favorite conspiracy theory is any that I make up. And I like the idea of this one that we're attempting to extract literally the soul of anybody that's participated in the military and make them ineffective in the new war space, Psy-war. So that's my idea.
Well, thanks so much. Thanks so much for being here. For everyone that's listening, please like, share, comment, subscribe, become a Patreon member so you get access to our bonus episodes. And I will see you all next Wednesday. Thanks.